Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. You are on the sidelines with the sideline guys. And as you can see, I'm joined again by my guy Cole for another NFL edition of the podcast. The Sideline Guys has returned. And Cole, why don't you remind the people where they could find you?
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter, the_real_ J. Cole.
You heard the man. Don't get it twisted. This is the real J. Cole, ladies and gentlemen. You can find me at Negron MMA on Twitter as well as TikTok and Chris Negron _ on Instagram. So we have returned after the draft, of course. We did our pre-draft analyzations. We did our mock draft, and now it's time to look through these different divisions and see how the teams did, right? It's time to grade these midterms, so to speak, and look forward to the rest of the offseason as the rest of the stragglers get signed up in free agency and we get the show running on 25, 26. So before we tip our hand and let the people know what division we're going to today, why don't you make sure you're following the brand at OTS Media Co. on all social media platforms, OTS Media on YouTube, so you never miss any of the dope episodes we've got cooking up for you guys. Had a big week in MMA last week where both me and my co-host really gave you some awesome picks. If you bet with us, you would have made a ton of money. So make sure you're locked and loaded on all of our postings so that you never miss all the dope stuff we've got coming your way. And with that being said, this show today is brought to you by Shroom Bar, the protein mushroom bar. It's made up not of psychedelics, but 4 powerful mushroom adaptogens. It's got lion's mane, cordyceps, reishi, and turkey tail wrapped up in a tasty bar with 12 grams of protein to help you power through all your workouts and give you the energy to finish your day. So why don't you save 30% off of your orders by using code OTS at eatshroombar.com. So with all that pleasantries out of the way, we're heading up north, ladies and gentlemen, to the Division of Kings, the AFC North. And man, I couldn't be happier. Obviously, my team is involved in the AFC North, and it's only right we start off right with my favorite team, the Baltimore Ravens. And our draft is as follows. We've got our first round pick, number 27th overall, Malachi Starks. Now, Cole, we talked a lot in the pre-shows about just how high we have Malachi Starks on our board. First of all, how did you like the fit with Baltimore?
I mean, the main thing that I think for Malachi Starks is regardless where he was going to basically fit because he's just that kind of player. Obviously, coming from a caliber college like Georgia, and then the amount of snaps that he had, we knew he was going to fit in. But if there's a place that you could really picture Malachi Starks being, it's in the black and purple.
I love that you say that because obviously we've got such a storied history with guys just like him. Obviously, we were a little higher on Nicky Minwari. He ended up going later on in the second round. So at least our predictions on that position didn't go out 100%. But to come away with the consensus number one guy at this spot, I'm going to be honest. I thought at this point, one of those guys would have been off the board already, whether it been Malachi Starks or Eamon Worry. So the fact that we had sort of our pick of the litter at the position was exciting. And I think it's dope that right at pick 27 for what feels like the third year in a row, right? In those range 20 picks, we're picking up a gem, God damn it. And I think he fell just to the perfect spot, like you said, just for the player projection, right? As far as his development moving forward, he couldn't have wished for a better spot. So we move on to the second pick of my Ravens draft. And of course, this one is a little bit more of a quote unquote gamble. But guy, if you ask me, I love exactly the way this one laid out. We've got Mike Green with the 59th pick in the second round. Now, Cole, this was someone that I was a little higher on than you, right? Obviously, there was some issues, of course, with his injury history, but also personal stuff too. So obviously this leads to this slide. Now, I think as far as his maximum peak talents, if we get that player, I think we got an absolute steal for this spot in the draft. Obviously, someone that was most people had being a consensus top 20 pick, falling all the way this way out. Obviously, where there's smoke, there's fire. And with the pick this late, no matter who you're picking, you can't really look forward to their production for you for that season, just because it's kind of rough, right? To depend on a starter at that position in most cases. But I think he has starter upside and maybe even all pro upside if he ends up fully panning out at the position. I think once again, he's got a lot of players that can help him on the back end to make his job a little bit easier on the front end. So I think the position is one of need for us, obviously, and I'm glad we ended up drafting someone this high with this kind of capital. But to get my second guy off the board at this spot after getting Malachi Starks in the first, I think this were both home run picks back to back.
I 100% agree. I mean, you had him as your second best edge. I had him as fifth, and I mean, the only reason why was just like you said, his injuries. Like a lot of high upside. He could potentially be the second, like you had him ranked. But for me, he's, no pun intended, very green. But he's ready to learn, and he's already got a good D line with him to learn from.
Yeah. Great shouts. Then we move on.
Before we get to the next one,
sir,
though,
yes,
real
sir.
quick, let's do some Cole wisdom here, just to put in perspective for everybody that Malachi Starks was both of our second best safety in our opinion, and then Mike Green was your second best edge, and he was my fifth. So for these two picks to go in the late first and the late second, like you said, home run, fantastic. In our mocks, I think we had Malachi Starks because Emin Wari went first. We had him going down to the Vikings, and then we had Mike Green going to the Falcons in the first round, and I chose that. And I think in our mock, if I remember correctly, we chose Walter Nolan for our pick, by the way things fell. But obviously, if the safety was there, maybe there would have been a chance that I, as the commissioner of Baltimore, would have made that decision.
Yep. We all wish we could beat a commish, God damn it. But obviously it isn't that easy. But yeah, I think looking back at our mock, it felt like in the moment everything was just falling too safely, too sweetly. And obviously it's easier to say that in hindsight, but proud of how we did at the top half of the board for sure. But we move on to our third pick, the pick number 91 in the third round. We got Emory Jones. Wait, excuse me. Let me make sure I got that. Yes, Emory Jones Jr.
Yes.
Out of LSU, the offensive lineman. So I don't know. I don't think this guy was a honorable mention for either of us. But I think at this point, especially at these picks, to pick someone in that middle area, I don't care which side of the ball it is, you got to check from me, right? This doesn't necessarily need to be someone that is a 3-down player for you, but obviously you want someone with this kind of capital to develop into that long term. I don't think this is necessarily a position of need either, right? So you're putting a guy in a spot where he can develop behind some of the best players in the league at the position. So I love this pick for that reason. And it kind of fell to us too. So especially with how offensive line thick this draft is, I think we got him at a good spot.
I agree. There might be a chance that he puts on some weight and could slide inside on the interior for you guys. There's not 100% chance on that, but he was right tackle at LSU. The only thing that I went back through and looked is the main thing is you get these guys in the third to fourth round. There's going to be some things they need to work on. And then fifth, sixth, seventh, you're going to have guys that are specific in this kind of caliber. And then they're a glaring weakness, more to say. But for him, it's just polish up his footwork and keeping his hands inside. But that's basic offensive line, repetitive stuff that he'll be able to get through.
Great shouts. We move on to our fourth round pick. Now, call me crazy. I'm excited for good old Teddy Buchanan coming in from California, inside linebacker. He's probably going to be competing with Trenton Simpson for that outside linebacker role, obviously opposite of Roquan. But I think obviously the main thing, this guy tested really, really well at the combine, getting the highest vertical among all the different linebackers, which, especially in today's NFL, right? If you talked about that maybe about 12 years ago, wouldn't have mattered too much. But especially in today's NFL, being able to stretch the floor and having those tools, love his intangibles in that way. Obviously, once again, round 4, not expecting this guy to be a starter for you per se, but I think he could be that for us this season even. So love this pick in round 4.
I'll say the main thing I got for Buchanan is he just looks like a Ravens linebacker, kind of your classic 2000s kind of guy. Great fit. He's definitely going to be a lot of help on special teams. He's already shown that he can cover in his college film on punts and kickoffs. And there's a chance that he gets to slide in and some rotation for them and get some significant snaps early.
Great shouts. We move on to our 5th round pick. Not the most exciting 5th round pick we're going to talk about today. We got Carson Vincent, the tackle out of Alabama A&M. The main thing I like about him is that he's versatile, right? I think especially at the NFL level, he can move around on that line. Doesn't have to necessarily always be at tackle. Maybe we can move him inside, right? I think depending on the need and depending on who's injured, we can kind of pick and play there. But being that he's the second offensive lineman that we draft, I like that we got someone that could play guard and tackle, right? Mix it up, have people that could fit into certain slots, So happy for him getting out of Alabama A&M too. Not a lot of guys coming out of that college. So,
well, I appreciate your Baltimore Ravens getting him because it helped me out in prize picks because HBCU, I hit the over. I knew there was going to be one. There always is. Main thing for him is he's huge. He's 6'7", 315. The main thing is that he just covers defensive linemen's bodies. And for me, he's a just nasty 5th round pick.
Yeah, I agree. Upside is huge. Next up, we've got Bilal Cohn at 6th round, pick 176. Now, I at first was like, man, do we really need a corner? I guess he's probably going to be fighting for TJ Tampa's spot on that 4th corner slot. But I don't really have much to say about the player. I think obviously at where we got him, I think he was a much higher. He should have been much higher rated to slide all the way back to where he did. I think he's going to be someone that's going to play higher than his pick suggests, especially considering we got Malachi Starks now to be in tandem with Kyle Hamilton. There's going to be a lot of room for these guys to pick up slack for each other. So I think that's going to make his play on the field look even more outstanding. So I love me some Bilal Cohn, a sneaky 6th rounder.
I would say I agree. Sneaky. There wasn't a lot of negative things to talk about in a 6th round pick whenever I was looking at his stuff. The main thing is that he's got very good eyes and awareness on where the ball is. The only thing you could say is that he needs to tackle better at corner, but everyone would say that that's a gimme, but more specifically towards just a quick out on a receiver, missing that immediately makes a first down a lot of times in the league. So that would probably be the only thing I would gripe on, but he's a 6th rounder. He's going to learn.
Yes, sir. Speaking of 6th rounders that are going to be learning quick, we got Tyler Loop at pick 186. This is significant because this was the first time, Cole, got to drop some wisdom on you, that the Ravens picked a kicker in the NFL draft. Coming out of Arizona, obviously just one of the biggest booming legs in the draft this season. Someone that finished his college career nailing a 60-yarder. I like the upside there, obviously, considering all the misconduct being investigated right now with Justin Tucker and various massage parlors in the DMV area. So let's look into that.
Must be friends with Deshaun Watson.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I wonder if maybe he could parlay this into a trade that gets him millions of dollars as well. Let's see how that one shakes out. But with all that, probably more than any 6th round is going to get talked about the rest of the way. Finally, we go LeJohntay Wester at pick 203, round 6. I think this was the obvious we need a punt returner guy pick, and I don't mind it at all. I think he could be someone, too, that if he continues to impress with his explosiveness, that can win some snaps on the offensive side, too, be a potential wide receiver 4 or 5 for us. can't be mad at the pick, especially at the spot. And I think this is probably one of the deeper drafts in recent memory, getting this many players. I think this is still a quality pick at 203.
Yeah, I agree. At this point, kind of the way the offense has been, he can just go in at certain points for that just burn and get you caught lacking. Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson lulling you to sleep in the run game. They pop him in if they're not aware of who's in on the formation, and he'll burn you over the top, no problem.
Yes, sir. Now, next up, we've got Aeneas Peebles. I'm excited to see how they say that one on the broadcast.
Aeneas, I got
Aeneas. There we go. Pick 210 out of Virginia Tech. What I love about this guy is he's someone that no matter what happens, even if he's getting tied up at the line, he's still able to collapse that pocket and get pressures, right? This is someone tied for the most amongst tackles in the ACC for pressures with 25. Obviously, this is a position of need for us once again. And I think all things considered, he should be able to thrive in this spot. Just let's get you in there like 55% of snaps. How about that? That's a good projection at this pick.
I would say he's a little undersized at his spot, but there's a chance with the way you guys run your defense that he might end up being like a 4-eye. It looks like he's a defensive end, but he's inside of the tackle and not outside. I feel like he will thrive a little more because he does have Aaron Donald's build at his stature. So he's a little undersized in his arms too. His arm length is not anything crazy, but the effort that he gives, it just shows that he's like a 6th-round pick. That's going to be a guy that finds his way to try to make a Pro Bowl.
I love it. Next up, we go to pick 212, round 6. We got Robert Longer Beam.
So many
beam is longer than yours. Got to make sure that gets laid out there. Out of Rutgers, too. So shout out to New York.
Couldn't even fit all the picks on the diagram. The Ravens has so many.
Exactly. I mean, and hey, this guy might actually play for us too.
Fast, very fast.
Fast, and also breaks up a lot of passes, which you love to see from this position, obviously. I'm interested to see how much burn he's going to get, but would love to see him emerge the way we saw someone like our Darius Washington emerge last season, right? Where you see him in a couple plays, you're like, I mean, this guy's pretty good. And then the role continues to expand as the season goes on. But time will tell how far we go with the long beam. But we move on to the final pick, round 7, number 243, Garrett Dellinger, our 3rd offensive lineman drafted. And at this point, this is the most significant thing you could say about this round 7 player. He's someone that got experience, right? 30 starts in his college career is important to note because at this pick, not a lot of them are consistent starters.
I was saying it was at different spots too. So another versatile offensive lineman that you guys have.
Yes, sir. Overall, to grade the Ravens draft, right? To look at the picture, to give it all, I would give it a solid B+. I think obviously you could have found a way, in my opinion, to parlay some of these picks, maybe to move them up in some way, or to add another quality 3rd player, right? But I think those first 2 picks, you are not going to get under a B just for those first 2 picks. And then beyond there, it's never the sexiest thing, but to draft some solid offensive linemen and some corners, I'm happy with it.
I'm about to say I gave them a B+ as well. The main thing is that even if it is in the later rounds, and some people can say it's just scrap and it kind of looks good on paper, but they greened everything out that they needed per all of the team needs that all of the ESPN, NFL Network, everything has shown. They greened it out. So it might look pretty like sliding that guard. Technically, guard was a need, but you got 2 tackles that are very versatile. So greening everything out's great. And then obviously still being a top Super Bowl contender and making additions like the first 2 picks goes a long way. So for me, it's a B+ as well.
Yes, sir. We move on to the Cincinnati Bengals and their 1st-round pick. They were able to secure Shamar Stewart.
Yeah, you called it.
This was one of my proudest moments, right, from our mock draft, getting not only the player but also the exact spot. Kind of felt to us in an interesting way that this was even able to happen, right? You ended up getting another pick later on too that I'm sure we'll talk about later, but just a perfect fit considering their needs and their position in this draft. And I think obviously this is probably not arguable at all their highest upside player in this draft. They need him to be a game wrecker for them on defense because they ain't bringing in no help on that side of the ball, right, Cole?
Yeah, you got that right. Well, the main thing I got is, I mean, we talked about it. He was my third best edge. He was your fifth best edge. And the fact that we had him spot on going where it was. We had a little joke way for ours with the Atlanta Falcons doing their thing, but we're not talking about the NFC South. We're talking about the AFC North. And I just think for me, this is a really, really good pick. Regardless, we felt like they needed to go edge no matter what, especially with the Hendrickson situation, where if they're going to still potentially make a trade, they've got this whole offseason, or if they're going to keep him at least another year to see how everything goes. But I mean, Shamar Stewart, he's just so big. He's going to cause problems. I don't think he's catching Lamar Jackson, but he's going to create havoc for the Steelers and the Browns.
Yeah, with a big body like that, you better be causing havoc down there. I'm really interested to see how he develops, though, because this is going to be pass rushing room, especially if they get rid of Trey Hendrickson. That's going to be really bare, right? So who are you learning from as a rookie? These are all things that are important to consider with a young player with this kind of talent. You got to make sure he gets groomed correctly. But their second pick at 49, they got Demetrius Knight Jr. Now, this was an honorable mention, if I'm not mistaken, on your side, Cole. So why don't you talk about the player a little bit?
The main thing for Demetrius Knight, and I mean, we talked about a lot of these South Carolina guys. They had a lot on the draft board that went. He's very instinctive as a linebacker. Got great size, and his point of contact, like he's not scared to at least. The goal is always as a linebacker, you don't avoid an offensive lineman, but you attack half of his body so that way you can take advantage. And he does a really good job of that. Closing gaps. If there's any fast acting play inside of the A to B gap, he can close it pretty quickly. Just watching him versus Bama last season just says enough, in my opinion, especially when we probably should have ran the ball more. And every time we did, he was there causing problems along with his teammates.
Yeah, man. I think the only thing that I didn't like about this pick was I felt like obviously you needed a tackle as well, but I think at this spot there was a couple different positions of need that they could have went and got the guy for, right? I think particularly looking at 49, am I crazy? Was Will Johnson still on the board or did he just come off?
Let me double check.
I think he might have just came off, so I might be talking
Let's
out
see.
the
We're
side of
talking
my mouth
about
here,
what was the overall pick? It was 9.
49. Yep.
I don't think Will Johnson was off the board yet.
Wow.
Yeah. Nope. He was 2 picks prior at the Cardinals.
2 picks prior. Yep,
2 picks prior.
So, I mean, at the spot, you got to do what you got to do. But I think that's the main thing I didn't really like about their draft in general. I just think you look at it and it's kind of like, yeah, it makes sense. They got guys to fill needs, but you don't really see a standout guy or a standout position where, okay, we've improved in a way that's markable. I think ultimately the spots that you need guys to fill in with rookies, obviously it's good to have a body at the position, but you're also banking on a lot as far as them turning around and being a productive player too. So,
I mean, and you talked about, Will Johnson being taken, but they still had the opportunity to take Benjamin Morrison and Trey Amos.
Yeah, good shout. And I think also getting someone who was the MVP for one of the best defenses on the country is a good shout too. Even though he wasn't ranked in the top 5, I think he's going to be a solid, productive player for them. But not the sexiest second rounder that we saw come off the board. But we move on to that third round pick at 81. They got Dylan Fairchild, the guard out of Georgia. So that means Cole has got a lot to say about the man.
The main thing is, as a third round pick, I feel like a lot of offensive linemen, the weakness is almost always the same. Now, how it's shown in film can be different, but the main thing is that his footwork is a little inconsistent. He can latch on to defensive linemen and end up making obvious holds. Holds happen every play, but it's when you make it obvious as it gets called. But if he is uncovered, him working to the linebackers, he punishes people and is really, really good in the run game. And like you were talking about too, like this pick, it's nice, but it's not a tackle. It's a guard. I mean, I see what they're trying to do. They want to develop a little bit of a run game so that way it makes things easier for Burrow and the rest of the receiving core that they have. Um, but at the same time, you still need the tackles to protect. So we'll see. I don't see I don't see Fairchild moving out to tackle, especially because his footwork is the issue. That's the main thing that tackles have to have. Um, but I mean, it's still a solid pick, especially going into the third round.
Yeah, if you're gonna put him anywhere in a pinch, it's probably gonna be a right tackle. But yeah, I agree with you. I think not the highest upside that you like for a third round pick, but I think definitely should be a solid player for them. And obviously, you can't go wrong fortifying a position like guard. We move on to their fourth rounder. They got Barrett Carter out of Clemson. Now, I think double dipping at linebacker is never an issue, right? You're going to get quality snaps at the positions no matter what now because you got two of them, right? If one of them isn't panning out as well as the other, hey, forget it. We'll throw in the other one in there. I think having depth at the position doesn't suck. But I'm not going to lie, this is someone that wasn't really on my radar, Cole. So do you have anything on Barrett Carter for us?
I do. I even had him as an honorable mention, but we had, me with my defensive players. I'd just write
Mhm.
10 names down, and I had there was a guy that I had as honorable mention that ended up being like a 6th or 7th round. We'll get to him whenever he gets picked, so I can go into that. But the main thing is like Clemson's still an elite program, so it's still it doesn't eye pop as much as Georgia and Bama or Ohio State, but Clemson is still, when you're talking about regarding the ACC, fantastic. Uh, Sometimes his difficulty is if they're a team that runs zone over gap scheme, and there's not a lot of, like, if there's anything pulling guards, tackles pulling, he has no problem. His vision is extremely well. When everything's moving in the same direction, whether it's outside zone or inside zone, he has a little bit of struggles trying to fill in what they call cloudy to clear. You work your way, if it's cloudy, you work your way into the clear, because the clear is obviously where the back is wanting to hit. Um, so that's the main thing. But he can be, and this is what we're talking about, like he's a linebacker that potentially could become an edge for them, kind of like a Jalen Walker. That's where he could thrive, in my opinion. But I mean, that's really it. There's nothing like crazy, like flashy. It's a linebacker. I love my linebackers, but it's a good, solid 4th round pick.
Yes, sir. And I think you could say the same about their fifth at 153. They got Jalen Rivers, the tackle is what we're calling him, out of Miami, but he originally started his career, if I'm not mistaken, at guard. I like this pick. I think, especially for this round and this value, and considering who they got in the next round, I think you can't hate on the value here, especially once again getting a tackle on a roster that I think only has 3. So now after the draft, 4 at this point, on contract for the next couple of years. That's kind of crazy to say out loud, but good position to need there.
I'm about to say I've got a little bit on Jalen Rivers. The main thing to talk about, he started at guard, ended up moving to left tackle. So at least from where I looked at stuff, they still labeled him as a guard. But in my opinion, like where you're looking at, he is a tackle, so it does fill that slot that we feel like is a need. Apparently, the rest of analytics of other things don't say it's a need, but we all know they need a outside guy on that O line. And the main thing is his size is so good. His arm length is ridiculously long, and so it helps with any of those speed rushers. He does struggle a little bit with power rushers. He's not as strong as you would think at his size, but he's pretty good, especially in combo blocks along with the guard. So with you get a pair up with Fairchild and him, maybe there's an opportunity for that.
That's a great shout. Now their final pick for the draft in the 2025, they got Taj Brooks in the 6th round at pick 193. Now I gotta say, man, this is somebody who I really loved, right? I think once again, this position being so stacked, as we talked about many a times, this is someone we didn't really get to talk about too much leading into our preview shows, but I think this is someone, if I'm not mistaken, he led his entire, like he holds the record for
The
the
record
most
for the
rushing.
college at Texas Tech. Yep, that's correct.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you for filling in the gaps
I
there,
got
Cole.
you.
Man, I was straying there a little bit, but I love Taj Brooks, man. I think he's one of those small, compact, but a burner at the same time. I think he's going to give you a good thunder and lightning with Chase Brown there in Cincinnati.
I was about to say, he gives me kind of Darren Sproles vibes, and I don't mean every small back has to do that. He's a little taller than Darren Sproles, but any small back that has good hands and doesn't really have necessarily breakaway speed, but the amount of cuts that they can make within the tackle box is ridiculous. And the fact that he was able to be a 1,500 rusher back-to-back seasons says a lot.
Mm-hmm. So
I'm going to like all of these running backs, man. I can't help it. This running back class was just so good.
Yeah, man, and there's some UDFAs that might end up being some real impactful players still too. So keep an eye out for that. And we move on. Speaking of liking running backs and talking about a lot of interesting moves, we move on to the Cleveland Browns. Now, their first pick requires some explaining. I'm sorry, we moved on without giving grades, ladies and
Oh,
gentlemen.
yes.
How can we do that? So grading the Bengals draft. I'm going to do this one live. And you know what? I'm going to go with a B minus. I think without Taj Brooks, this would have been a C plus. I think the only reason I give them this grade, though, like I'm not mad at the players they got. I just think as a roster, they've pigeonholed themselves into a draft like this, where no matter what, once the pick came around, they needed to get the guy at that position just to fill the roster slot, which kind of makes it harder to fill out a draft, if you ask me. But ultimately, I think C plus is a solid place, but B minus because of Taj Brooks.
Well, even with Taj Brooks, I gave them a C plus. The main thing for me is that the key needs were not addressed early, and they kind of just went with, well, I wouldn't even say best available. Shamar Stewart, home run pick.
Mm-hmm.
But the second round pick, Demetrius Knight, there were a lot of things that they could have taken that were not only maybe potentially just better overall on the board, but also a better need for them, and they didn't take advantage of that. I like the offensive linemen. Nothing like crazy about them. Same thing for both linebackers. So for me, it's really their mid picks. I love Taj Brooks and I love Shamar Stewart, but the rest of it is kind of muddled together. Jalen Rivers kind of at least fits the mold. I would have gave them a C minus otherwise if it wasn't for the Jalen Rivers pick, but they got a C plus for me.
And just like that, we move on to the Browns. Now, their first pick ended up being at number 5, turned into Mason Graham. So we're going to talk about how quality that pick is, right? No matter what. But how do we feel about the move, right? The biggest draft night move. They trade with Jacksonville to move back from number 2 to number 5, giving up on the potential of drafting Abdul Carter or Cam. Wait, what am I saying? Cam. Travis Hunter. Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing here, ladies and
Yeah,
gentlemen.
I think the main thing is that based on the trade that was given, and I don't have the details in front of me anymore, but with the collective amount, it was when we talked about it on the last episode that I talked about. I could see Cleveland trading back if I remember correctly, and I remember the Podfather telling us, they got to be smart if they're going to do that, or at least trade back in. I think is what we talked about. So for them to trade back, and Jacksonville was all over social media talking about we're about to make an explosive decision. And that was the key thing. And it wasn't clicking in my head that they would trade up, not trade back. When we talked about Jacksonville most likely trading back versus a lot of other options. So they trade up to get Travis Hunter. And then the best defensive lineman falls to Cleveland. Like a fantastic move. Nothing you normally see from them, for in your opinion, in my opinion, and really consensus across the board. The best interior defensive lineman falls to them at number 5.
And I think that's the key that also makes you love the pick too, right? Because you can't hate on this. Just imagining him playing alongside Myles Garrett is giving me nightmares already, right? So this is a good slot, a good spot to think about. At the same time, though, I will be honest, man. What I do like about it is the potential of Jacksonville's first rounder next season. I think obviously that could be a real big addition, considering that, hey, they haven't had the seasons they thought they would the last 2 seasons. So it very well could go in that same way, despite the talent they just added. And I think depending on how their seasons go, I think it's really going to change how we look at this trade, because I think ultimately no matter what, at pick 2, you were going to get a special game-changing player. I think Mason Graham still is that at pick 5, but not to the same significant level as far as having a potential top jersey salesman on your team, as well as having the top positional player for you at that spot. So I think a lot goes into making the pick. I think ultimately I love the player and I can't hate on this first round pick, no matter what. A great spot. And considering you're giving yourself more capital next season, I think with the way the rest of their draft goes, and we're going to get there, Cole, but with the way the rest of their draft goes, it's very clear that they're not looking to compete this season and they're going to be hitting the full rebuild into next year. I think it's the perfect spot to be in, considering.
Especially with what the upcoming class could look like. My thing for them, and we talk about like Baltimore had 11 picks, Cincinnati had only 6. And because of this, though, they were able to get some acquisitions that allowed them to, I think, if I remember correctly on our diagram when it pops back up, 7 total picks. So to at least get, in our opinion, the best interior guy, even though it's not a knockout name per se, like Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter, we get to these later picks and it starts to look like we have more of an idea of what they're wanting to do this season to potentially go into where Jacksonville might end up with another top 10 pick that they have now gotten.
Yes, sir. Now we move on to that second round pick. It's time to get special, ladies and gentlemen, because not only did this team draft another top 5 player at both of our boards, but Carson Scheswinger is a goddamn home run pick, if you ask me. This is someone that's going to bring you top level effort, no matter the case. And if I'm not mistaken, only missed out on 5 tackles last season that he could have potentially gotten. So this is somebody that's going to complete plays for you, and that's a big hole, if you ask me, that the Browns need, considering the injury to Jeremiah Wusu-Koramoah. This is a perfect fit for that. But also, shout out to the Lions' theory of drafting, right? We're going to get some milk on this defensive side of the ball, and it's going to be quality.
I will say I love this pick. He was my second best linebacker. He was your third because you decided to use Jalen Walker, but it's okay. The main thing is that we talk about he was a former walk-on, so he's got that dog in him. He's got the fight. He's got, everything you want when you want a NFL caliber linebacker. They, like you were talking about, they definitely need this due to the injuries, especially because they gave up an average of 4.5 yards per carry last season, which was one of the worst. And even though they've got later picks, like we said, they established 2 studs on the defensive side of the ball to get this draft going. And it's all about what do they do from here?
Yeah, definitely. Because I think even though we love the players they got, this isn't the side of the ball that they need the most help, right? So obviously you're picking this high for a reason. You got a lot of things you got to figure out. Let's address that at pick 36 in the second round, getting, in my opinion, one of the best players in the draft in Quinshon Judkins. But I got to talk to you, right? Because this is only right that we have a discussion about this, Cole, right? Because this is a very high impact player for us, both of our 5th best running back. But this was also a surprise play because 2 picks after this went his teammate, Travion Henderson, to the Patriots, which makes me wonder, because all things considered, I think even when you look at the RB room that they have, I think the kind of player that Travion Henderson is a little bit of a better fit than Quinshon Judkins. Am I crazy, Cole? Was this a surprise to you when looking at the pick?
Not necessarily. Travion Henderson gives me more of a Nick Chubb vibe. Quinshon Judkins is bigger. He's taller and he weighs more. But at the same time, it was hard for us to gauge the 2 of them because you really couldn't say they were yin and yang at Ohio State. They just were their own entity. And so we were talking about how great it's going to be. They're both going to do their own thing now with Cleveland and then with Henderson at the Patriots. But Cleveland could have easily had him as, we talked about, we knew who our number 1 was. And then after that, 2 through 5, really it mixed and matched however you want. We kind of had the same 2, if I remember correctly, with Hampton and when he went second. So really that 3 to 5 between Henderson, Johnson, and Judkins, each team probably had it graded differently based on what they needed. So we don't know. If they would have taken Henderson, the Patriots most likely would have taken Judkins.
Mhm.
And I know Caleb Johnson went later than both of them.
Yeah.
But I mean, like we talk about, this running back class is so deep. Both of them are going to make an impact on the team that they're on.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. We're nitpicking, but with this high of a pick, I think it's important to say that when you're taking a little bit of a reach at the position, all things considered, and it's not like it's that big of a difference, right? Where, for example, let's say you're getting someone like a Jaden Higgins versus getting an Emeka Ibuka, right? Where you're getting a certain style of player. I don't think that was really the thing here, right? It's just who do you like better at the spot, and ended up drafting someone. Now, I disagree with you with that school of thinking, though, as far as 3 through 5. I'm actually really firm on Trevion Henderson being that 2B in the class to the 2A of Omarion Hampton. I think they're that level of upside, and I'm really high on Hampton as well. So that speaks to how high I am on Henderson. But I've said a lot to say we love their second round pick. We move on to their third. Harold Fannin Jr., one that you love a little bit more than I do. So why don't you just lead the dance on this one, Cole? How you like this pick, considering they still got Njoku there as well?
I mean, well, to me, I think that's what makes this a key. The fact that he's, it was a high third round, and then not as many teams. If we saw the way the first round kind of shook up, there was not necessarily a lot of need, except for maybe the Colts that needed a tight end. The Bears just did their thing. We'll get to them in the NFC North. But these other tight ends that were here, he has the highest upside. People talk about what Tyler Warren did, but a lot of his stats had a number 2 next to it, because this guy had number 1. And I mean, of course, you say, oh, he was at Bowling Green, he didn't play anybody. But then you go turn the film on and see what he did against Penn State's defense. A lot of high upside. And I think him to be paired with Njoku, or potentially taking over that spot already in his rookie year, says a lot. I'm excited. Obviously, he was my number 2 guy. I think he was your number 4 guy. I nothing but excitement. It's crazy how all 4 of these picks have been somebody in our top 5.
Yep, I love that you give that shout too, because I agree. He also is a stud, my fourth best tight end off the board. And I think someone that, given that you're able to build behind someone as potent as my guy that I just said his name, David Njoku. I just got to say this, right? I hate bringing myself into this, but I got the chance to speak to David Njoku because I took a class with his stepsister at Fordham University. So shout out to David Njoku. What a mensch. But as far as learning behind that guy, I think some fantasy owners, right, might get a little frustrated with Harold Fannin in the first year, because they're like, man, I wanted this guy to pop. Everyone talked about his upside, and he has been pretty quiet this season as far as production. I don't expect him to pop really this year, but I think having the opportunity to learn from someone that good, considering that in some ways, not the athletic freak that Njoku is, but I think, like you said, touted to a level that he was drafted with this kind of capital. He's going to look to be that level of producer at the position by the end of the season. So look to see his role grow as the year goes on and he gets more comfortable at the NFL level.
I was about to say, I can see more like an Isaiah Likely comparison, even this early. At least the way Isaiah Likely came in, and Mark Andrews was the guy, and he still did his thing.
Yes, sir. I wonder if they end up running any 2 tight end sets, all things
I
considered.
hope so, especially with running the ball.
Yep, especially with probably Shador being the starter out there. We move on.
Debatable.
Very debatable, but not really. We move on to their 4th pick. Their 5th pick in the draft. In the 3rd round, they go Dillon Gabriel, the quarterback out of Oregon. Now, I got to ask you, right, because in the 5th round, they were able to end up getting the guy anyway, so it really doesn't matter, right? But all things considered, if you're on the clock and Shador Sanders, the player, not the everything else, just the player, right? Let's act like his name is Tim Dillon, right? But he's the same exact player as far as skills. Are you picking Dillon Gabriel with the pick, or are you going Shador?
So there's going to be more into this as we lead up. I feel like Hard Knocks got to call Cleveland, and they've got to do something with this quarterback room that they're about to have with the 5 guys. Shout out to the burger joint. The main thing for me, Dylan Gabriel was honorable mention. He's just a left-handed Bryce Young, but he doesn't have the arm Bryce Young had, and also the escapability in the pocket. I had already told you that I feel like a lot of Oregon's skill guys were underutilized because he really, out of all of the quarterbacks, or at least the 9 that I thought in this draft would at least have some sort of backup role to a starter. He was probably like the bottom of the barrel for me. Was it like ninth? Uh, but I think that maybe there was a chance that like it wasn't going to work out, so they just went and got him, which still blows my mind. Maybe they're high on him. You know how Cleveland is sometimes. Their decisions uh, make no sense. Everything looked great, and then they did this, and I was scratching my head. Obviously, the whole Shador thing, but then also Will Howard was on the board. Milrow, no, maybe Milrow had already gone. I think Milrow was 4th round. Uh, I could look that up here in a second.
Third round, third round.
He was he before Dylan Gabriel or after?
I believe he was after because Seattle picks after.
Okay, so like I said, that mean they could have taken Milrow if they wanted to. Show I think was already gone with the Saints. But the main thing, like Riley Leonard and Will Howard were sitting there, both programs that played in the national championship, and you picked Dylan Gabriel. So that was what made it questionable for me, barring not even including the Shador Sanders situation. That they definitely, in my opinion, they could have taken like a Will Howard here, or maybe this is just an insurance pick. I don't know why it was so early when they could have gotten something else. Maybe they were worried somebody else was going to take this. I'm not sure. But an insurance pick where eventually they ended up getting their last pick.
I love that we go from this insurance to the next All-State insurance with their 4th rounder at pick 126 to getting Dylan Sampson. I love this pick too because, like you said, as far as having insurance, you could almost argue that pre-draft, if we saw these last 2 picks and they flipped them, it would have made sense, right? If they got Dylan Sampson with the Dylan Gabriel pick and then got Dylan Gabriel with this pick, it would have made sense in a mock world, right? But yeah, I'd say I don't know why Dylan Sampson slid this far, but
Agreed.
I like him being this complementary role with the in an ideal world, growth of Quinshon Judkins' role for this team. I think he could be a really nice, speedy back to complement, and maybe even let's see how that plays out. Maybe even steal the passing downs away from Quinshon Judkins. We shall see. I don't think fantasy owners are going to be happy with being a Dylan Sampson owner, at least now, just because it's a crowded backfield. But I think this is a guy that has pretty good upside for the spot you picked him at. So another insurance pick, but this is a great pick if you ask me.
I was gonna say a great insurance pick to the point where, like you said, the backfield is kind of crowded, but I mean he still led the SEC in yards per game, and he led the league in touchdowns, and that says a lot in that league. I know he started getting a little, it wasn't necessarily like an actual true injury, but he was getting a little lingering hurt consistently through the end of like the last 4 to 5 games of the season. So I know that maybe is the only reason he slid, especially because this draft was so deep in running backs and offensive line. So it was really at that point, like, do you want that extra guy if this is a 2A, 2B situation, or if this is a 1A, 1B situation, or a true 1-2, we don't know. But both of these guys, I mean, we never know. Judkins might be a bust. I doubt it. And Sampson might take over, but it's the NFL. Anything can happen.
Mm-hmm. Yep, anything could happen, and having two of some of the best players at the position in the same draft, you can't hate on that. Now, finally, the biggest one, the reason why we're all here, ladies and gentlemen. Round 5, pick 144. They go Shador Sanders. Now, I gotta ask you. Let's talk about the theory here and why this all played out the way it did, right? Because I think, let's be real, he's your number 3. He's my number 2. This is a stellar pick if they would have got him 3 rounds ago, right? This is a stellar pick. Let's talk about the slide, right? Let's talk about the elephant in the room, the Deion Sanders size elephant in the room. I think, and obviously a lot of the talk points to this, that the slide really centered around the off-field stuff, right? And what he would potentially bringing to a quarterback room. Now, when you consider all of that and being the reason that he slid, I think it's ridiculous that the Browns would make this pick because you already have four guys in the quarterback room. And now this is going to be, you have now brought the clown show with it. And given that he was your fifth pick, he's almost going to be getting grace in a way that someone his stature shouldn't, right? Because everyone is going to be talking about putting him out there no matter what. But then does it make sense for a team to do that with the guy that they picked with fifth round capital, right? So it's just a lot of things that make this pick controversial, right? Because he slid in the first place. I think as far as the quarterback position, right, and this situation they find themselves in for 25-26, I think this very well could be the worst team in the NFL next season again. I think they were 2 this year. They might be number 1 next year. I think that's considering if this position doesn't pan out in a way that we don't expect, they're probably going to be really bad this entire year. Why not figure out who that guy is, right? And let him get reps. I don't care if maybe you don't want to burn someone and have them start 17 games. That makes sense, right? But I think come week 10, week 11, Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders needs to be out there, if you ask me, because we got to get them reps. We got to look forward to what we're trying to build in 26. And in my opinion, you don't want to be in a position, although you drafted these guys with very low capital, that you get the number 1 pick, and now you're forced into picking a quarterback again. I think that's the position that in some ways, obviously, Tennessee found themselves in this season. And I think it could very well, especially considering the quarterback position in general in this year's draft, they could very well look back at the end of the season and hate the fact that they didn't pick up someone like Abdul Carter or a Travis Hunter at that number 1 overall pick. So you don't want to be in Tennessee's position again next year, but given you got a 3rd and a 5th round pick at quarterback, you're probably going to be there anyway, right, Cole? So how do you feel about getting Shedeur here with their last pick?
I mean, I feel like at this point, because there was no way he was going undrafted. And a lot of things, a lot of lies, a lot of truths have gone out, talking about his interviews. For me, in my opinion, and this is why I had him down at 3, and in my opinion, I had a decent gap between Jackson Dart and him from 2 to 3. And it's only because this whole class, if it wasn't for the lack of compared to quarterback classes we've had in the past and potentially in the future, Tennessee wouldn't even take Cam Ward where he was if it wasn't such a dire need for them. Because to me, he graded out as maybe a late 1st to an early 2nd, and then the rest of the guys were like late 2nd all the way down. With Shedeur, Will Howard, Show, Jalen Milroe all being like 3rd, 4th, 5th guys. So I mean, we talk about, like I was saying, when we get to the final team in the AFC North, we'll talk about another quarterback, and then a lot of these quarterbacks, there was a slide. It's just his is more publicized because of the media hype for it, for one, the consensus that he was the number 2 in a lot of areas. Shout out to Delaney Walker, the only person that called. Not only he was not going in the 1st round, he would slide all the way to the 5th. So I don't know if Delaney Walker knew something. He put $1,000 bet versus Will Compton on their podcast, Bussin' with the Boys. But I saw that, and that was early January when he talked about that. Because in my opinion, Shedeur, realistically, as a quarterback, he is like a mid-3rd round guy, but that's only compared to if I put all these quarterbacks where I had Cam Ward as like a late 1st, but it was based on team needs at that point. So him sliding, it's got to be the interview thing. There's a lot of stuff talking about he brought his posse. I mean, it's really just his crew. I mean, he's got his cameraman in the interview, and they allegedly said that he's talking about what they're going to do for him versus what he's going to do. He's not that childish. He has his moments, but he's more humble than that. Dion doesn't let him just run around. The only thing that I think people have a gripe on is he's not Dion. He's Dion's son, and he will always have that shadow, just like we'll eventually talk about Archie Manning in the coming seasons. But he's got to be his own person. And he shows it the same way his dad does, but his dad did it and backed it up. And he's backed it up in some ways, but but he's not gotten there. His dad's got a gold jacket. There's not a lot of people that got a gold jacket.
Yep, that's a great point. And I think obviously the hype was there with all those things considered. I think I said it then, and I will agree that the top 5 pick hype never made sense to me. Like we talked about that during the mocks too, and even as we got closer to the week, right? I think most people kind of felt the same way.
And he only did certain interviews. That was the other thing that I think he purposely chose teams that were in that top. And then the only team on the outside, I think, was the Steelers. And then I know some people have thrown the race card around, but the number 1 pick was also a black quarterback, and Mike Tomlin that's not who he is.
Yeah, literally. So yeah, it's crazy. It's an interesting time out here, but ultimately we got to give a grade.
Yeah,
right? We got to give a grade.
I need a hard knocks though, is what I need.
Yeah, because this is going to be a team full of. I mean, we didn't even talk about Sir Littlefinger himself, or Kenny Pickett, and what his upside looks to be at this position. So I think, gun to my head, Cole. Let's be honest here. I think if we're being real here, if I think who can actually be a quality starter for this team, I'm going Kenny Pickett at 1, and I'm going Shedeur Sanders at 2. I don't care. I don't care that Joe Flacco is there. I think there's legitimate cause for Shedeur to be the second best, but I think with a chance of even hurdling that number 1 slot. But if I'm being honest, my heart of heart tells me Joe Flacco starts most of these games.
Yeah, he's going to. That's what I was going to tell you. I was saying, in my opinion, and the way Cleveland's going to have things going, he's going to start these games. And I think this is where the situation of not necessarily attitude, but how is Shedeur going to how's he handling this right now? On the outside, he can make it look like he's going to go to work. He will go to work, but how on the inside is he feeling? How is he going to take criticism? How's the rest of his team going to treat him? There's a lot of stuff that goes into this, where someone like Dylan Gabriel, who it was to me out of the 9 quarterbacks that have any shot of anything in this draft, was the bottom of the barrel. So he's probably going to be more open-eared to listen to Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett.
That's a great shout, but I don't know, man. If I'm the Browns, although we both agree that it's probably going to be Flacco being the guy, I think you go out there and see what you got in Kenny Pickett, right? You already drafted these 2 guys. They're going to sit and learn no matter what. I don't think it's smart to start one of those guys day 1 unless in camp they're just ridiculously ahead.
Pull a Russell Wilson or a Kaepernick.
Exactly, which I think if anybody has that shot, it would be Shedeur, if I'm being honest. But we'll see how that plays out. I would actually love that, right? Give me the media circus times 50, because if the word starts being, man, this is the best quarterback in the room, I think a lot of people are going to start feeling stupid before the season even starts. So there's a lot to look forward to with that offseason. Like you said, we're chewing on it, but I'm giving the actual draft a B, man. I think what hurts about giving them a B is I think come the end of the season and we these guys pan out in the way that we think they do, I think this could very well be an A- draft. But I think ultimately the only reason I'm going B is I feel like we wasted picks just doing dumb shit between Dylan Gabriel, Dylan Sanders, and Shedeur Sanders. I think, Dylan Sampson, excuse me. Like, in my opinion, I think if we ordered these differently and you got the same guys, I might have even gave you a higher grade. I just feel like towards the back end, things started to fall apart at the seams. But I love their top players, and I think they've gotten some quality guys considering our rankings, probably the best out of all the teams in the AFC North. So I like their draft, but it's still a solid B for me.
Yeah, collectively, everything was in our top 5 or an honorable mention here out of their 7 picks, which is something that I don't know how often that would happen. Seems how everything kind of just slides specifically for Shedeur. But I am giving them a B plus for this. The main thing is the top 4 picks are home runs for me. They're not necessarily team needs exactly. They still need an offensive tackle. They do need that firepower at receiver, in my opinion. They at least another receiver. And that's why that Travis Hunter, trade back was a little shocking for me. But needless to say, I like the draft. Like you said, you changed the 3 picks. I'm going to just assume that there was a lot of stuff that a lot of people did not know or they're aware of that we didn't know, and things either got cleared up or someone just went on ahead and took a shot. And just let bygones be bygones. We're talking about it now. At this point, after this, the only reason it should be brought up is if he takes that spot. People are talking about he might not even make the practice squad. I highly doubt that.
I agree.
The main thing is, what is he going to do from here? That's my thing. Like my mindset, and that's a shout out to the greatest college coach of all time. That's all Nick Saban talked about the entire first round. He goes, "Why are we talking about these projections? Everyone does it for fun. I mean, we did it. We did our mock. We know we did our thing. We have our top fives, but at the same time, these projections, at least you let the media affect you. And Nick Saban talks about it's rat poison. You don't listen to it. And Shadora listens to it a lot. And that's probably his biggest downside is he should be his own worst critic, not let other people say things about it. And so to me, like, don't project wherever this goes and that, because people slide all the time. I mean, we talk about Will Johnson. No one wanted to talk about that. Obviously, it wasn't as far of a slide, but different things happen. And it's just now you've been drafted. Go get it.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's time to prove it. And I think, like you said, the person inarguably that has the most to prove this season is Shador. Whether or not he gets the chance to do that, time will tell. But we move on. Yeah, I like that. That was smooth shit. We move on to the Steelers draft, the final team of the AFC North, and sneaky good draft. Even though there isn't a standout name besides this first pick, we got Derek Harmon at pick number 21 in the first round. Obviously, someone who definitely slid due to his injury concerns. But I think, all things considered, where they got him, this is a guy that has much higher potential at this pick at a position that they needed, obviously, considering Cameron Hayward eventually retiring very soon. You get to mentor behind that guy before he gets out of here, which is the perfect spot to be at in this defense, especially. I think this guy's going to be special for the Steelers, and I hate it being a Ravens fan, but great pick for the Steelers.
Yeah, I mean, he was my fifth best defensive lineman. He was your third. And I know I forgot about us talking about our mocks. I'll just really quickly, we know what we did with the Ravens, the Bengals, you hit bullseye. For the Browns, we had the Travis Hunter because we didn't have the trade going on. But then the Steelers, we had them picking Omarion Hampton. Obviously, they chose not to, and they took Derek Harmon, and Omarion went the very next pick.
Mm-hmm. They very
So
well could have done that, but I like them. I like them picking this position.
I do as well, especially with who they get next, waiting all the way in the third round. But Derek Harmon's going to do his thing. It's like you said, fantastic. He gets to sit behind a big time veteran right before as he goes off into the sunset eventually and retiring, and he can take over that. I mean, he's going to have snaps. He's not going to sit, but he's going to get to learn a lot in his first year.
The funniest thing about this pick, though, is I was low key rooting for the mock. Right, I was like, hey, this could be Omarion Hampton, but I knew that this was going to be Derek Harmon. Like, this was a Steelers pick, no doubt about it. And I think the best guy they could have gotten at this spot. So, home run, if you ask me. Now, their next pick didn't come into the third round, right? So, waited a while to make this one work. With the 83rd pick, I completely messed up the graphic there. We got Justin Jefferson, JK. With the third pick, they got Caleb Johnson, the running back out of Iowa, someone that we are both very high on. Your third RB and my fourth RB. So to get him this late in the draft, honestly, I'm surprised after the second round backs that went that he slid this far into the third. I really thought he would have went earlier once that second sort of rush of RB happened in round two.
Not to give you any PTSD, but I forgot to mention when we did go over our top five who this guy reminds me of, and it's just crazy that he's going to be wearing the black and gold because he reminds me a lot of Le'Veon Bell, prime Le'Veon Bell. The patience that he has. I know you don't like to hear that, but at the same time, he's going to do great things. Maybe he'll be able to do what Najee couldn't for them initially. I mean, Najee was still great, but he wasn't elite, at least in their system. And I mean, he's still got a decent tandem in that running back room with him.
Yeah, and I think Gainwell's going to have some quality snaps too.
Agreed.
Like it's going to be a three-headed room there. But I got to ask you, who is your 1A?
I think Caleb takes the starting job.
Whew, I'm not gonna lie to you, man. I think Jalen Warren might be the guy, at least for the beginning part of the season. Maybe he settles into that role as the season develops and at
Game
the end of
4.
the year.
Game 4.
Hey, maybe. I like the player. Once again, I just think Jalen Warren has been waiting to get his role bumped up as well. I think he's going to fill into that as really nicely as well, if he does get that role expansion. But we shall see. I think obviously you want to feed the guy that you see the future of as well. So I agree with you there. 1A, what should probably be Caleb, but I like the pick. We move on to their fourth round pick. They got at pick 123, Jack Sawyer. Let me take this off real quick. Out of Ohio State, the edge. This is someone that was he an honorable mention for you? Because he was not for me.
Maybe I did not mention him, but that's where I made the mistake. I think that's why I typed that in, because he was somebody on national championship, game-changing play, strip sack. I had to make sure I said that right. Strip sack, fumble, and scoop that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Make
Cotton
a
Bowl,
huge
baby.
difference. That's what I'm
Cotton
saying.
Bowl.
So, fantastic. To me, I mean, he's got the weight for sure. I know they've got him listed as an edge. He's definitely not an interior box guy. I definitely could see him if he wants to put on weight. I don't know. He's a little shorter I say shorter. He's 6'4". What am I talking about? But he sometimes has a little bit of issue getting off blocks. But if you not get to him in time, it's an issue. So for a fourth round pick, this is fantastic. I think out of all the fourth round picks, I want to make sure I don't want to misquote here. Out of all of the fourth round picks that I'm looking at, outside of maybe Cam Scatterboo, and Danny Stutzman, I'd probably say that he's probably the steal of the fourth round. I don't know. Malachi Moore is good for Bama. Kyle Kennard for South Carolina. I mean, we said Dylan Sampson earlier, but I want to say out of all these guys, he was probably like the steal. Like, it's going to be sneaky, being that true edge guy for them. It's not going to be anything like crazy, especially because they like to run that 3-4. So they want the big bodies on their defensive linemen and then their edge be really linebackers. I'm excited to see. He's probably going to just be a rotate guy to start, but there's a chance that he goes in and tries to just steal the job.
Yeah, man. I couldn't have said it better myself. This is a guy that they've got 3 picks, right? But they didn't have a second rounder. This pick in the fourth round is third round value, if you ask me, and probably even higher in certain scenarios. So all good shouts and a good value at the position. We move on to the fifth rounder at 164. They went Yaya Black out of Iowa.
Love that name.
So would you say that he is a nose tackle? What is the position here?
So the difference between a defensive tackle and a nose tackle, let's get technical here. Let me do the little defense for
Thank
y'all.
you.
Is defensive line just means they're more of an interior guy that is flexible. Like, you talk about Mason Graham. He can be someone who can, if he has to, he can play head up on a center, but most likely he's going to be a guy as a 3 technique, so outside the guard or inside the tackle. Your edge guy is a true edge. It's going to be someone outside the tackle, head up on a tight end, or a linebacker that stand up in a rocker stance, like a 2-point stance. So if you say DT, this is a guy who's true interior as it gets. He is not moving outside the guard for anything unless they call a stunt. He's going to be head up on a guard, or he's going to be head up on the center. And this is most likely because this is teams that are fit perfectly for the Steelers. At 3-4, he's going to be this head up nose, most likely. They say tackle just because a defensive tackle is like a 3 technique. But I can see him being, he's probably actually going to be the nose tackle, the 3 technique spot. He's not going to be a true hard nose because he's so tall at 6'6". Normally noses are not that tall. But to be a 3 technique, that's like absolutely perfect for him. But realistically, the Steelers can do whatever they want with him. For his size at the 5th round,
and with that pedigree too, like they
super,
already love the school.
Strong, so strong.
Yep, they got his teammate Logan Lee too last season, right? So you're pairing him up with somebody
and his teammate Caleb Johnson's also on the team. Yeah. So I mean,
different sides of the ball.
Yeah, but hey, Iowa boys.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You love to see it. And I just think this is just another clear, hey, you remember how our season ended? Yeah. We need to stop the run. So let's try to address that. I like the pick there, all things considered. Now we move on to their
Oh
next
boy.
pick, the most anticipated pick, the one that probably you could have argued the position need should have probably went earlier in these picks. We've got their 6th rounder at number 185, Will Howard. Now I just gotta say, right? People talked a lot about JJ McCarthy last year and his pedigree because of what he was able to get done. Hey, goddamn it. Ain't this the same prospect? How come he ain't get that kind of love as
But in my
JJ
opinion, I think Will Howard's better than JJ McCarthy.
as a prospect,
I
right?
stand on business. JJ McCarthy's the worst quarterback to win a national championship in college.
I love that take because we got a lot to figure out in Minnesota
We're
this
gonna
year,
find out. We're
especially
gonna
since
find out.
Sam Darnold left and everyone tried to make it seem like the only reason he got that contract was Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. So only time will tell how well that's going to play out. But we got Will Howard going to the Steelers here. I was surprised by this just because I think in round 2 or 3, although we like the guys they got in round 3 and 4, I mean, they didn't have a second round pick. And although we like those guys, I think you could argue they should have addressed his position already, which makes it a little tough for me, especially because they don't have a starter announced still with this whole Aaron Rodgers thing being up in the air. I think them getting Will Howard, though, in my opinion, is a clear indicator that they do have Aaron Rodgers, that situation or something figured out because you can't imagine they're going to be excited about going out there and starting Mason Rudolph. Don't get me wrong. He did well in the spots that he was allowed to shine in the last couple of years, but not a quality starter or someone to look at as a starter.
The Browns and Myles Garrett.
Oof, yeah, especially even he came back to bite him in Tennessee too, which is kind of funny. But yeah, man, I don't know. I think this is a clear need pick. I don't love it, but I think the pedigree as far as being a winner, you'll love to see that out of your quarterback. Same things, all things considered, though, not really in love with the prospect.
See, I disagree. He was 4th on my board. Him being at 6, that's why I talk about like all these quarterbacks. It wasn't anything strong, but they definitely were like a 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. So for him to slide early 6 to me was a little crazy. Especially with like if it was not talking about Shador, but specifically like Dylan Gabriel in particular. Definitely would never have picked Dylan Gabriel over Will Howard. You talk about, and he also has more athletic abilities too. He does have escapability. They ran a lot of quarterback runs with him as well. It just, it being in the 6th round, you needed the quarterback. This is kind of where I said it's that flashy. We got the green spot in, and you're talking about like Aaron Rodgers. Hopefully that signed, sealed, delivered. Hopefully his attitude will be a lot different than it was in New York or Jersey. And I mean, Will Howard needs to, I don't know if that's the best guy for you to sit behind, but I think Will Howard has a good head on his shoulders, so he can sit behind anybody that is elite, or at least was elite, in Aaron Rodgers. And no matter the aspect of his demeanor and his personality, I think Will Howard could learn some good things from him and could become that guy.
I love it. We move on to the 7th round at pick 226. They got Carson Bruner, the linebacker of Washington. Do you got anything for me on Mr. Carson?
He's just a gap sound guy, and all that means is that he's just really good inside of the tackles. He's not got blazing speed per se for an in the box linebacker to like work sideline to sideline. But anything inside the box, he's going to meet the hole pretty well. His pursuit's still great, even though I said he's not the fastest, but there's just times that he just gets there a tad too late, and it creates a larger gain. His drops are okay in zone coverage. It's nothing like crazy, but I mean, we're nitpicking on a 7th round guy. But the main thing for me is that he's a 7th round guy that I didn't see any like super glaring issues. So that's a good thing. Obviously, if you look at highlights, it's a lot of positives. So you got to go deep dive into some film and look at the negatives. He'll do some plays on special teams for sure, though.
And you love the family ties too. His father, Mark, also played for the organization at tight end. So love to see those little tie-ins. We move on to their final pick at number 229 in the 7th round. They got Dante Kent, a cornerback out of Central Michigan. I think this is somewhat, obviously, considering the corners that they have on that team, a little more of an average sized corner. But I think someone that could be a quality starter come the end of the season. I think in that fourth slot specifically, I think he could do some damage, especially with how good things should be humming in that front four. I think it'll be easier to cover the guys back there, so shouldn't have hard time earning snaps, if you ask me. So Dante Kent, even though this wasn't somebody that we circled or necessarily was looking forward to, I think he reminds me a lot of, trying to remember his name, but he was a breakout corner in a similar position last season. Beanie Bishop. He could sort of
Good
be
pull.
that later UDFA to come in and make some noise later in the 7th round.
I would say I like that. Good pull, by the way. The main thing for him is a 4-year starter at Central Michigan. Consistent. It might not be anything eye-popping once again. And then also he did punt return. So that's another little cherry on top for them to go on ahead and get him.
Yes, sir. And putting a wrap on it, putting a bow on it. My grade for the Pittsburgh Steelers is a solid B minus. Like, I wanted to go C plus plus, but I was like, you know what? I'll give them a B minus. I think ultimately not having a second rounder, their draft was kind of already fucked from the start, and they were in a tough position. But considering their 3rd and 4th round picks being homers here, sort of lifts that draft grade up a little bit for me, at least. So I'm gonna go B minus. How you feel?
I got a B minus as well. I would do a solid B just because of the Will Howard pick, in my opinion, versus maybe yours. But at the same time, I feel like the position of need for a lot of these schools, what am I talking about? Saying college, these organizations is the offensive line and the receiver. And if you don't notice, not a single offensive line was drafted, and this was an offensive line heavy draft. Obviously, they got the running back. We talk about the running backs being deep in this draft, but 0 offensive line. And I know they have a decent offensive line, but it's still on the at least on the edge for the tackles. They need the work, and they did not establish it. So hopefully they do something in free agency. Maybe not a UDFA because that's probably not going to be an eye popping guy, but maybe in some trades or anything like that.
Yep, there's still a lot of needs for a lot of these teams, and hopefully they don't figure it out. Because goddamn it, I hate the Steelers, and it feels good to be able to send them home at the end of the season. But they had that same grace against us a couple years back when Lamar got hurt. So always a war whenever we go and play the Steel Curtain. And where I'm living right now, funny enough, it's Steelers Nation out here, man. So all the time, I just troll these people that I see at work. I'm like, man, that's a really nice hoodie. Thanks, man. I'm like, yeah, let's go Ravens, though. And then they're like so confused by it. It's hilarious.
A little callback to episode 1, the first time I was with you guys, if you remember my callings, because I don't necessarily have a favorite NFL team, but the impact of my father being a big football head. That's why I like being in the state of Georgia. Atlanta Falcons, they make some questionable calls, not this year, but we'll talk about that later. But I do like the Steelers. Never, like I said, I've never been like huge, like diehard fan like I am for my college guys, but I'm your fantasy guy though. That at the bottom line, like if it comes down to it, if I'm watching a Steelers Ravens game, yeah, I'm gonna have to lean for the Steelers. But am I gonna know who the better team is, at least currently in the last few years? Yeah, it's okay too. You got to be honest with yourself.
So am I getting this straight, right? By grades, did my Ravens get the best grade, or was it the Browns here?
Well, I had the Browns and the Ravens both get the B plus, but
Yeah.
I think you gave the Browns a C.
I tanked them. Yep, I tanked them.
No,
So I gave them a B.
Just a regular B,
Yep,
right, or B minus.
a regular B.
So if we talk on average, then yes, the Ravens, but that should not come to a shock. I mean, maybe drafting wise could come to a shock in the positions that they were in, but the acquisitions that they grabbed, it also helped. They had 11 picks, right?
Yep.
So that's the other thing too. They were able to get enough draft capital because now what ends up happening is maybe not 11 pan out, but you had more darts to throw at the board and more opportunities for something to stick versus the guys that only had 6 and 7 draft picks.
Yes, sir. You love to see it. And I think all things considered, you could argue the Browns had the better once again, quality guys at the positions they got draft out of any team. But time will tell as far as we go on who's going to have the best draft. But good to feel like my Ravens did the best in the division, goddamn, because we're already ahead. So we might as well keep bridging that gap. Cole, this was dope as hell. I can't believe we went this long in just one division. So it's only right we keep doing them this way.
7 more to go.
Yes, sir. 7 more to go. 7 more episodes for you to all feast on, ladies and gentlemen. So thank you for tuning in. Cole, why don't you let the people know one more time on the way out where they can find you?
I got one more thing before I do that. I just want to let you guys know, you think it's trivia. It's not trivia. I'm going to catch you on a different time. I'm going to mix up our divisions and things like that. The main thing here is we got these draft grades. We did everything bottom line, but it all comes down to playing on the field. What's the result on the field? And I'm going to say it at the end of every single one of these in the next 7. It is what you do with these guys at this point. Time to go play some ball.
Yes, sir. And that's why we love this time of year too, right? Because we could do all this talk. We could get hyped up about all these guys. But once they go out there and perform, that's when we'll really know who deserves the grade they're going to get. So you love to see it. 2025, we got a lot to learn about these young guys and a lot to look forward to. So with all that, thank you so much for tuning in again, as always. And we'll catch you next time for another AFC edition. But until then, respect yourself and do the right thing like the Falcons finally did. We'll see you all next week. Boom.